So Scott, one of the great challenges that I find people experiencing who have a strong faith and strong personal convictions about moral issues, about social issues, about faith issues, is how do you communicate those kinds of non-negotiable, essential truths, whether you're talking about marriage, you're talking about identity, you're talking about the exclusivity of Christ for salvation. Yeah. How do you talk about those in a world where it's just, oh my goodness, all of that is the unpardonable sin if you don't go with the party line that you see all of your celebrities on Twitter going with? How can a Christian communicate those things without going soft and just weaning out of the entire conversation by just saying, hey, it's just all love, grace, and truth just, I see people do it. They turn into jellyfishes with no spiritual, moral backbone. And it's as if truth to them really can be relative as long as I'm nice and they like me.
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I don't think that Jesus ever was accused of being nice, but he certainly was kind. And there's a big difference. Nice is kind of a superficial way to, I think, protect ourselves from persecution and opposition, which Jesus said we should actually expect. The big question is, are we being persecuted by the same kinds of people Jesus was? And are we being drawn to, or are we being attractive to the same kinds of people that seem to always be running toward Jesus? And so the people that were hardest on Jesus were typically religious people that were smug and self-righteous. It's in Luke, I think 18:9, talks about those who were confident in their own righteousness and looking down on other people. And so I think we've got to be careful just to make sure that if we're being persecuted and opposed, that it's the same, the people that oppose us are fitting similar profiles as those who oppose Jesus. And then on the other side, you see, sexually damaged and broken people, while they're being ostracized by religious communities. Jesus, says to the woman at the well, I don't condemn you, now leave your life of sin. And so there's grace and truth held together for Jesus, right? Grace without truth, it's kind of sappy sentimentalism, like the jellyfish you're talking about.
Yeah.
Truth without grace is kind of aggressive and hurtful. But when you put them together, you get the aroma of Jesus Christ. And so Christ says, for instance, the woman caught in adultery, I do not condemn you. He starts there. And then he says, now let's talk about your sexuality. Let's talk about the fact that you've been with this man that's not your husband, etc. Now leave your life of sin. He doesn't drop either one.
Yeah.
But the order of those sentences is really important. He starts with I don't condemn you. So there's a posture that earns him is essentially the right to be heard. When people know that we love them, they'll listen to anything we have to say to them, if they know and sense that we really care for them. And so, there's so many different issues you mentioned that we could talk about, but maybe let's say that the abortion discussion. What does it look like for the church to be so kind and compelling and loving toward the mother as well as the child, that mothers who are not Christians will actually start to think first about local churches instead of local clinics to go with their crisis pregnancy, right? So we have a culture to build as the people of God that makes us feel like the logical place to go, even and especially for a person who doesn't even believe in Christ, because we're known to love better than anybody else, and that earns us a whole lot of opportunity to say the hard things, to say, now let's talk about sin and ethics and law and how the law of God is actually the path to life and to freedom and to joy and to being the fullest version of who you can be. And so it's both and. We can't let go of either grace or truth. We can't let go of love or law. We have to bring them both together.
I love everything that you're saying here, Scott, and it reminds me of, in my mind, I go back to so many times I've heard people say the culture is lost, and so much of our posture as parents is to want to protect our kids from the culture and just sort of, keep the culture out. And I think we lose the great commission. I think we lose the great mission that God gave in the book of Genesis to be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and take dominion over everything that God has made. And so the phrase you just used is, we need to go create the culture rather than run from the culture, shun the culture, and curse the culture. I think that's what we as the church are supposed to be doing, is creating a culture of love, creating a culture of life, creating a culture of truth. And by definition, those things will be attractive when they are met with the Spirit of God working in the heart of those who don't know Christ. And I think increasingly we can right the ship. Others have sort of a pessimistic view about the future. I have an optimistic view about the future. And I think that you do too, provided we are combining love, truth, and grace together in our dealings with those outside the faith.